Commander Jiwoo Park stood at the window of the United Nations Space Command headquarters in Geneva, looking up at the stars. The morning sun painted the sky in shades of orange and pink, but his eyes were fixed on something far beyond Earth's atmosphere. 20 years ago, humanity had discovered we were not alone in the universe. Now, in 2154, Jiwoo was about to become Earth's official representative to the Galactic Council. It was a great honor, but the weight of it pressed heavily on his shoulders. The message had arrived 3 days ago through the communication relay station that orbited Mars. The Galactic Council wanted to see humanity's leaders. They wanted to meet us face to face. Jiwoo was chosen because he had spent his entire military career studying alien cultures and learning to think like beings from other worlds. The UN believed he was the best chance for humanity to make a good first impression on the galaxy's most powerful beings. At 45 years old, Jiwoo had the calm face of a man who had lived through many difficult situations. His dark eyes showed intelligence and careful thinking. He was not a tall man, but he carried himself with the strength of someone who had trained his entire life to be strong, both in body and in mind. Today, he wore a simple dark suit instead of his military uniform. The UN wanted to show the galaxy that humans were peaceful, not warriors. 3 other people would travel with him to the Galactic Assembly Station Horizon 7. Dr. Min-A Lee was a brilliant scientist who had studied the chemistry of alien life forms. She was 38 years old and had spent the last decade working in secret underground laboratories, learning everything she could about the beings from the stars. Minnie was quiet and thoughtful, but her mind was sharp as a knife. She could see connections between ideas that most people missed. Colonel Teo Kim was the head of Earth's military space operations. He was a big man with a scarred face and serious eyes. Teo had fought in 3 different wars on Earth before humanity had turned its attention to the stars. He understood strategy, conflict, and the way that power worked in the universe. The UN sent him because if things went wrong, they needed someone who could think like a soldier and understand how to protect Earth's interests. The last member of the team was Assistant Secretary Hai-Wan Choi. She was the youngest of the group at 35 years old, but she was the smartest diplomat that Earth had produced. Hai-Wan had a warm smile that made people trust her, but behind that smile was a mind that could understand what people really wanted, even when they pretended to want something else. She had learned to speak 6 different alien languages in just 5 years. The UN believed that if anyone could convince the Galactic Council that humans were worth listening to, it would be Hai-Wan. The 4 of them met at the spaceport in the early hours of the morning. The ship that would carry them to Horizon 7 was smaller than Jiwoo had expected. It was built using technology that humans had learned from the aliens who had visited Earth in the past 50 years. The ship looked less like an airplane and more like a large silver egg that floated above the ground. Inside, the ship was comfortable but plain. There were sleeping quarters, a dining area, and a command center where Jiwoo could watch the journey to space. The flight to Horizon 7 would take 3 weeks. A lot could happen in 3 weeks. Jiwoo found himself thinking about all the ways things could go wrong. As the ship rose into the sky and began to leave Earth behind, Jiwoo stood in the observation area and watched his home grow smaller. Minnie came to stand beside him. She was eating an apple, which seemed like a normal thing to do at such an important moment. But it was very much like her to think about practical things even when the future of humanity was at stake. "Are you nervous?" she asked him quietly. "Yes," Jiwoo said. He did not believe in lying to his team. "The universe is very large, and we are very small." "But we are smart," Min-A said. "And that might be enough." During the 3 weeks of travel, the team prepared for their meeting with the Galactic Council. They studied reports about the different alien species that were members of the Council. There were the Valorians, who were tall and had blue skin. They were logical and cold, and they believed that order was more important than anything else. There were the Zendai, who had many arms and could think in ways that human brains could not easily understand. The Zendai were merchants and traders. They cared about money and power. There were many other species, too. Some of them looked almost human, while others were so strange that it was hard to understand how they could even be real living creatures. Some lived in water, some lived in gases, and some lived in ways that humans had no words for. Teo spent his time studying the military strength of each species. He made charts and graphs that showed which aliens had weapons and which did not. He looked worried all the time. "We are so far behind," he said to Ji-woo one night. "If they wanted to destroy us, we could not stop them." "Then we will have to make sure they do not want to destroy us," Ji-woo said. Haewon practiced her speeches. She walked around the ship saying the same words over and over again, trying to make them sound beautiful and true. She wanted to say something that would make the Galactic Council understand that humans were worth keeping alive. She wanted to tell them that we had art and music and love, and that these things meant something important. When Horizon 7 finally appeared on the ship's screen, everyone gathered in the observation area to look at it. It was the largest thing that Ji-woo had ever seen. It was bigger than entire cities on Earth. It was a station that floated in space, and it was made of metal and light and things that human eyes could barely understand. Thousands of ships were parked around it. Thousands of different alien species walked inside it. As their small ship moved closer to the station, Ji-woo felt his heart beating faster. He looked at his team. Min-ae was pale but steady. Teo's hand was touching the weapon at his side. Haewon was smiling, but her hands were shaking. "We are here," Ji-woo said to them. "For better or worse, we are here. Now we find out if the galaxy will accept us, or if we are about to make the biggest mistake in human history." The ship began to slow down as it approached the docking gate. None of them could possibly know that the Galactic Council had already made their decision about humanity. None of them could know that this meeting would not be a greeting, but a funeral. None of them could know that the galaxy had already decided Earth should be destroyed. The Grand Assembly Chamber was nothing like what Ji-woo had imagined. It was not a small room where leaders sat around a table talking to each other. Instead, it was an enormous circular room that was so big that Ji-woo could barely see the other side. The ceiling was 1,000 feet above their heads. Giant screens floated in the air, showing images and information that flickered and changed. Thousands of alien beings sat in seats arranged in circles, going up and up until they disappeared into the distance. At the center of the chamber was a raised platform where 6 beings sat. These were the leaders of the Galactic Council. The head of the council was Supreme Counselor Vexthor, a Valorian with blue skin and cold black eyes. Vexthor was hundreds of years old, and he looked like he had seen everything that the universe could possibly do. He did not look impressed. Ji-woo and his team were led to a small platform in the center of the chamber. They stood there, feeling very small and very far from home. When Ji-woo looked around, he saw thousands of eyes watching them. Most of those eyes did not look friendly. "Welcome, humans," Vexthor said. His voice was deep and cold, like metal scraping against ice. "We have called you here because the Galactic Council has made an important decision about your species. You should prepare yourselves to listen to what we have decided." Haewon tried to speak, but a red light appeared in front of her mouth, and no sound came out. The aliens had turned off their ability to make noise. They would speak, but the humans would only listen. "The human species," Vexthor began, "has shown a pattern of behavior that is dangerous to galactic peace and stability. You have grown too quickly. You have developed weapons at a speed that concerns every member of this council. You attack each other on your home world. You destroy your own environment. You are violent and unpredictable." He paused, and suddenly giant screens appeared in the air. They showed images of Earth's wars. They showed bombs falling and buildings burning. They showed humans fighting each other in the streets. The images were real, but they were also chosen to make humans look as bad as possible. Every image was one of violence and pain. A female Zendai alien with 5 arms stood up and spoke. "The humans say they want to join the galactic community, but they bring only weapons and war. Their entire history is written in blood. This is not a species that can be trusted with advanced technology." Then an alien that looked like it was made of pure energy stood up. It was called a Luminite, and it lived in a special suit that kept its energy from destroying everything around it. "I have studied their communications," the Luminite said. "They speak of conquering planets and taking resources. They dream of becoming the most powerful species in the galaxy. This is a threat to everyone." One after another, the alien species spoke against humanity. They talked about human violence. They talked about human greed. They talked about how fast humans had grown as a species. They seemed to believe that humanity was like a disease that needed to be stopped before it spread too far. Mine whispered to Jiwoo, "They are lying. They are choosing only the worst parts of our history." But Teo was looking at the military forces that he could see gathered in the chamber. There were weapons pointed at them from 100 different directions. If these aliens decided to attack, there was nothing that Jiwoo's team could do to stop it. Then Vex Thor stood up. His voice became even colder than before. "Therefore, the Galactic Council has voted. We are no longer willing to allow Earth the status of probationary member of our community. From this moment forward, Earth is quarantined. No trade, no technology sharing, no diplomatic relations. You will be cut off from the galaxy completely." Haewon made a sound of shock, but her voice was still blocked by the light. But Vex Thor was not finished. He sat down, and then he said words that made Jiwoo feel as cold as death. "However, many members of the council believe this is not enough. Many believe that humanity is too dangerous to exist at all. Therefore, we are calling for a secondary vote. Do we allow humanity to continue to grow on Earth, or do we implement the extinction protocol?" The chamber went silent. The word extinction hung in the air like a poison. A vote was called. Lights began to appear in front of the council members. Green lights meant no to extinction. Red lights meant yes, humans should be killed. Slowly, red lights began to appear, more and more of them. The chamber filled with red light, like the room itself was bleeding. When the vote was finished, the result was clear. 372 species had voted for humanity's extinction. Only 58 species had voted to let humans live. Humanity did not have enough votes to stop what was about to happen. "The vote is not final," Vex Thor said calmly. "As probationary members, you have the right to present evidence that your species should not be destroyed. You will have 1 hour to make your case. After that, we will vote again. If the result is the same, humanity will be marked for extinction. The process will begin in approximately 100 of your Earth years. This will give you time to prepare your people, if you wish." Haewon was finally allowed to speak. She stood on the platform and her voice was shaking, but she was brave. She told the council about human art and music. She told them about human love and hope. She told them about human science and medicine. She told them about all the beautiful things that humans could create and feel. But it did not matter. The council had already made up their minds. They had already decided that humanity was not worth saving. Minnie tried to explain human science. She talked about discoveries that humans had made. She talked about human intelligence and creativity. She talked about all the ways that humans could help the galaxy, not hurt it. But one by one, the council members stood up and said that human science was nothing compared to alien science. Everything humans had done, the aliens had already done 1,000 years ago. Teo stood up and said that if the Council attacked Earth, humans would fight back. He said that humans were good at fighting. He said that humanity would surprise them. But this only made the Council more sure that humans were dangerous. They said that Teo was proving their point. This was why humans had to be destroyed. They were too aggressive. They were too willing to fight. When the hour was finished, the vote happened again. This time, 401 species voted for extinction. Only 29 voted to let humanity live. The galaxy had spoken. Vex Thor looked down at Jiwoo. For a moment, their eyes met. "Your species will be given 100 years to live," Vex Thor said. "Make peace with your gods, if you have them. In 100 years, the extinction protocol will begin, and Earth will be destroyed." Then the chamber was silent. The red lights were gone, but their color still seemed to fill the air. Jiwoo felt his heart breaking inside his chest. Humanity had come to the stars hoping to join the galaxy. Instead, they had learned that the galaxy had decided they should die. As guards moved toward them to take them away, Haiwan looked at Jiwoo with desperation in her eyes. They had come to save humanity. Instead, they had just sealed its fate. In 100 years, every human that had ever lived would be dead. The Galactic Council had decided that this was the way the story of humanity would end. The guards brought them to a small room that had been made for human guests. It was cold and gray, with no windows and no views of the stars. The door locked behind them with a sound that sounded final, like a coffin being sealed. For a long time, no one spoke. Jiwoo sat on a hard metal chair and stared at the wall. Min-ae walked back and forth across the small room. Teo sat with his head in his hands. Haiwan stood by the door, listening to see if the guards were still outside. 100 years, Min-ae finally said. That is all we have. 100 years before the galaxy destroys us. It is not fair, Teo said. His voice was full of anger. They made up their minds before we even arrived. They did not listen to anything we said. They had already decided what they wanted to do with us. Jiwoo stood up slowly. His legs felt weak, like they might not support his body anymore. We need to think, he said. We need to think clearly. What are our choices? We can go back to Earth and warn them, Min-ae said. We can prepare them for what is coming. We can spend the next 100 years getting as strong as possible. In 100 years, we still will not be strong enough, Teo said. He was right. The weapons that the Galactic Council had shown them were so far advanced beyond anything that humans had created that it would take centuries for Earth to catch up. Haiwan had been quiet, but now she made a soft sound, like she had just thought of something. She turned away from the door and looked at Jiwoo. There might be another way, she said quietly. What way? Jiwoo asked. He did not believe there was another way, but he wanted to hear what Haiwan was thinking. The right of challenge, Haiwan said. It is an ancient law of the Galactic Council. It is older than any of the species that are here now. Any species that has been sentenced by the Council has the right to challenge the decision. What does that mean? Min-ae asked. It means we can propose a test, Haiwan said. A test that is meant to prove whether the Council's judgment is fair. If we can complete the test, the Council must accept our challenge and they must let Earth live. Teo shook his head. That is not going to work. The Council will just give us an impossible test. Yes, Haiwan said. That is exactly what they will do. But there is one thing they cannot do. They cannot give us a test that is more impossible than death itself. And they cannot refuse if we are brave enough to try. There was a long silence. Jiwoo understood what Haiwan was saying. If they challenged the Council, they might die. But if they did not challenge them, they would surely die anyway. At least this way, There was a small chance that humanity could survive. "How do we challenge them?" Jiwoo asked. "I am not sure," Haiwan said. "But I know that we have to go back to the council chamber. We have to stand in front of all of them and demand the right of challenge. We have to show them that we are not afraid, even though we are terrified." The guards came to bring them food a few hours later. Haiwan spoke to the guard, a large alien creature that looked like it was made of stone and had eyes that glowed green. She asked to see the council again. The guard made a sound that might have been a laugh or it might have been something else. But the next morning, they were brought back to the Grand Assembly Chamber. This time, the chamber was even more crowded. It seemed like the entire galaxy had come to watch the humans be sentenced to death. Vexthor looked down from his high seat, and there was something like curiosity in his cold eyes. "We have come to invoke the right of challenge," Jiwoo said. His voice was steady, even though his heart was beating so fast he thought it might explode inside his chest. The chamber erupted in noise, thousands of alien voices speaking at the same time. This was clearly not something that happened very often. Vexthor raised his hand, and the noise stopped. "The right of challenge is a very old law," he said slowly. "It has been used only 7 times in recorded galactic history. Only twice has the challenging species been successful. Are you certain that you wish to invoke this ancient right?" "We are certain," Jiwoo said. "And you understand," Vexthor continued, "that if you fail in the test that we give you, you will forfeit your right to existence. Your species will be destroyed immediately, and there will be no second chance." Jiwoo looked at Min-A, at Teo, and at Haiwan. They all nodded. "We understand," Jiwoo said. Vexthor leaned back in his chair, and Jiwoo thought he saw a small smile on the alien's face. "Then we accept your challenge," he said. "We will give you a test that will prove whether your species is worthy of existence." The council began to whisper among themselves. Finally, Vexthor spoke again. 300 years ago, a great space station called Omega-9 became lost in what you call the Obsidian Nebula. This station was created by an ancient civilization that is now extinct. The nebula destroys all technology and all light. Every rescue mission that has tried to reach Omega-9 has failed. Dozens of expeditions from our most advanced species have died trying to find it. He paused. "If you can enter the Obsidian Nebula, find Omega-9, retrieve the quantum core from the center of the station, and return it to this chamber within 72 of your Earth hours, then the Galactic Council will let your species live. More than that, we will offer you full membership in the galactic community, with all of the rights that come with it." The chamber went silent again. 72 hours to do something that had killed hundreds of advanced aliens over 300 years. It was clearly an impossible task, but it was a task. And there was a chance, however small, that humanity could succeed. "We will do it," Jiwoo said. Vexthor almost smiled. "Very well," he said. "You will leave immediately. The Station Horizon 7 will provide you with a ship and weapons, everything you need to survive the nebula. After 72 hours, if you have not returned, we will assume you are dead, and the extinction protocol will be put into effect." As they were led away to prepare for their mission, Haiwan whispered to Jiwoo, "I have no idea if this will work." "Neither do I," Jiwoo whispered back. "But at least now we have a chance. Before, we had nothing but death waiting for us. Now we have death waiting, plus an impossible task," Min-A said. "That is 72 hours more than we had before," Teo said. And so humanity's last hope began to take shape. Not on the home world of Earth, but in the darkness of space, where no human had ever been before. They would have to succeed where the most advanced species in the galaxy had failed. They would have to enter a place where technology did not work, and where the darkness seemed endless. They would have to find something that had been lost for 300 years, and they would have to do it in just 3 days. The ship that the Galactic Council gave them was the fastest thing that Jiwoo had ever been inside. It was sleek and beautiful, with walls that seemed to be made of light itself. The aliens called it a quantum shifter, and they said it could travel faster than ships that were 100 times larger. It was a gift, but it was also a test. The Council wanted to see if humans would even be able to fly such an advanced machine. The ship's computer was so smart that it could think like a person. When Jiwoo asked it questions, it answered in a voice that sounded patient, but very sure of itself. The computer explained that the Obsidian Nebula was a place where the laws of physics were different from everywhere else in the galaxy. The energy in the nebula was so strong that it destroyed all computers and all advanced technology. Any ship that entered would lose its power within minutes. "This seems like it was designed to fail," Teo said, looking at the map that showed the location of the nebula. Min-A was studying the reports of the ships that had been lost. The reports say that every advanced civilization tried to use their technology to survive the nebula. They tried to use force fields and advanced computers, but none of that worked because the nebula destroyed everything. "So what should we use instead?" Haewon asked. Jiwoo looked at Min-A. The scientist was staring at something on the computer screen with an expression on her face that he knew very well. Min-A had just thought of something important. "Basic machines," Min-A said slowly. "Things that do not need computers to work. Things that work through simple physics and chemistry. The nebula can destroy advanced technology, but it cannot destroy a simple lever or a pulley or basic fire. Like the machines from hundreds of years ago," Teo said, understanding what she meant. "Exactly," Min-A said. "Before computers, humans built incredible things using just physics and mathematics, stone and wood and metal and rope. The ancients could build structures that survived for thousands of years without any technology at all. They spent the next hours preparing. They removed the advanced weapons from the ship and replaced them with basic tools that they found in the storage areas. Hammers, ropes, pulleys, and simple mechanical devices. They studied the ancient designs that humans had used to build the pyramids and the cathedrals and the bridges that had stood for centuries. Jiwoo had a different idea. He began to teach the team how to think like soldiers in ancient wars, how to use their minds and their bodies to solve problems that machines could not solve. How to work together as a team and not panic when things went wrong. As they got closer to the Obsidian Nebula, the computer began to break down. First, the screen that showed where they were going started to flicker. Then the navigation system stopped working. Finally, the computer itself seemed confused, like it was forgetting what it was supposed to do. "It is starting," the computer said, and its voice sounded like it was in pain. "I am failing. You will have to navigate without me." The nebula appeared on the screens like a wall of darkness. It was not just a cloud of dust. It was something alive, something that seemed to swallow light and energy. It looked like a mouth opening to eat them. The moment their ship entered the nebula, everything stopped working. The lights went out. The engines went silent. All the machines on the ship simply stopped, like someone had switched them all off at the same time. The ship began to fall through the darkness. Teo had trained for this. He had studied the old ways of flying ships before computers existed. His hands moved across the mechanical controls, switching them from electric power to basic hydraulic systems. Slowly, the ship's engines started to work again, but they were running on much less power. Min-A was calculating. She was using paper and pen, writing down numbers and working out mathematical problems like a scientist from the ancient past. She was trying to figure out where the station Omega-9 should be based on the last known location and the amount of time that had passed. "I cannot guarantee where it is," she said to Jiwoo. "My calculations might be wrong by thousands of miles, but this direction seems most likely." She pointed toward a part of the darkness that looked exactly like every other part of the darkness. They flew into that direction, and for the first time since they had entered the nebula, they saw something that was not darkness. There was the ghost of a shape, huge and broken, floating in the void like a corpse in an ocean. Omega 9. The station was dying. Great parts of it were broken and floating away. Other sections were twisted and bent, as if something had tried to crush it. But it was still there. After 300 years, the station still existed. As they got closer, they could see ships attached to the outside of the station. Some of them were new, or at least newer than others. These were the rescue missions that had failed. They had crashed into the station or become stuck in the debris field. Ji-Woo carefully guided their ship toward one of the intact docking bays. The ship shook as they landed. The impact was harder than Ji-Woo wanted, but it worked. They were on the station. "The quantum core should be in the central chamber," Min-A said, reading from the documents they had studied before the mission. "But we have no way to know how to get there, or what dangers might be waiting for us." They suited up in spacesuits that the aliens had provided. These were basic suits, made without computer technology, relying on simple mechanics to keep them alive. They had oxygen for 6 hours. The quantum core was somewhere in the dark depths of Omega 9. As they walked through the corridors of the dead station, they found evidence of the rescue missions that had come before. They found skeletons of aliens, wearing spacesuits that were much more advanced than their own. They found tools that had stopped working, computers that had ceased to function, and dreams of survival that had ended in death. But they also found something else. They found evidence of how the previous rescue teams had tried to solve problems. They found scratches on walls where aliens had tried to cut through obstacles. They found tools they had created to move heavy things. The humans were not the first to visit this station, but they were the first to see the solutions that others had already tried. Min-A used these clues to figure out how the station worked. Tayo used the ancient military techniques that Ji-Woo had taught him to plan their route. Haewon kept them all moving forward and kept them all from giving up when they discovered new obstacles. They found the central chamber after 8 hours of searching. It was a massive room, the size of an arena, and in the very center of the room, floating above the ground in a shaft of light that came from nowhere, was the quantum core. It was beautiful. It was made of a material that seemed to have no color and every color at the same time. It pulsed with a light that was so bright they had to shield their eyes. But there were also problems. The chamber was filled with security systems that had been designed 300 years ago. There were pressure plates in the floor that would trigger traps if they stepped on them. There were holes in the walls that shot out dangerous energy, even in this place where most energy should not work. "This is why the others failed," Tayo said. "They tried to use technology to get past the traps. They tried to hack the systems, but the systems were older than their technology." Min-A began to study the pattern of the traps. She realized that the ancient builders had created the security system using mathematics and physics. They had not relied on computers. This was a puzzle that could be solved by understanding how things worked, not by having more power than your enemy. For the next 4 hours they worked together. They used ropes and pulleys to move heavy objects. They calculated angles and distances. They used fire to heat certain materials and make them expand or contract. They used water and other simple chemicals to break down barriers that seemed unbreakable. And slowly, step by careful step, they made their way toward the quantum core. When they finally reached it, Min-A carefully picked it up. It was lighter than it should have been. It pulsed gently in her hands, like a living heart. "We have to leave," Ji-Woo said. "Now. We have less than 40 hours to get back to the council chamber." As they ran back through the corridors of the station, the whole thing began to shake. The station had been dying for 300 years, and now it seemed that their disturbance had finally broken something. The walls began to fall. The floor beneath their feet began to crack. They ran faster than they had ever run before. They ran as if death itself was chasing them, because it was. Behind them, the ancient station was finally completing its death. They reached the ship just as the floor behind them finally gave way. Pieces of Omega-9 fell into the darkness of the nebula, like the final prayers of a dying god. Jiwoo sealed the airlock behind them and immediately moved to the control station where Teo was waiting. "The ship is damaged," Teo said. His face was covered with the sweat of fear and effort. "The engines are not running at full power. I can get maybe 70% of the power we need." "How long to reach the council station?" Jiwoo asked. 36 hours at maximum speed," Teo said. "We have 38 hours before the council kills us. If something else goes wrong, we will not make it." Behind them, Minnie was holding the quantum core. It had grown warmer in her hands, and it was pulsing faster now, like something inside it was waking up. Haewon was checking the oxygen systems to see if anyone had been hurt during their desperate escape. "We will make it," Jiwoo said, though he did not know if this was true. "We have come this far. We have done what the greatest species in the galaxy could not do. We will not fail now." The journey back through the Obsidian Nebula was the most difficult journey any of them had ever experienced. The ship was damaged, and the damage was getting worse. Every hour brought new problems. A crack appeared in the main wall, and they had to seal it with pieces of the ship itself. The life support system began to fail, and they had to repair it using nothing but their hands and their knowledge of basic mechanics. Teo had not slept in 20 hours. His eyes were red and his hands were shaking, but he refused to leave the control station. He could feel the ship dying beneath his fingers, could sense every hesitation in the engines, every moment when the machines wanted to give up. By pure force of will and knowledge of ancient flying techniques, he kept the ship moving toward home. Minnie had begun to study the quantum core more carefully. She understood now what it was. It was not just a machine. It was an artificial brain created by an ancient species. It held memories and knowledge that was thousands of years old. It was a treasure beyond value, and they were carrying it back to the council that wanted to kill them. "If they see what this thing really is," Minnie said to Jiwoo, "they might kill us immediately just to take it from us. Then we will show it to them and hope they decide we are worth keeping alive," Jiwoo said. Haewon was thinking about how they would present themselves when they returned. They had succeeded at the impossible. They had done something that no other species in the galaxy had been able to do, but the council would not want to admit that they had been wrong. They would not want to accept that a young species like humans could outthink them. "We need to make them feel something," Haewon said. "Not anger, not fear. We need to make them feel hope. We need to show them that humanity is not a threat, but a gift." "How do we do that?" Jiwoo asked. "By being human," Haewon said. "By showing them what it means to work together, to refuse to give up even when everything seems impossible, to care about each other so much that we would rather die than fail." 20 hours into the return journey, the engines began to fail. One of them simply shut down and would not restart. They were now running on half power. "We will not make it," Teo said flatly. His voice was hoarse from not sleeping. "We will be 3 hours short. There is no way to make the engines go faster without destroying them completely." But Minnie was looking at something. She pointed to a section of the ship that contained the cooling systems. "What if," she said slowly, "we used the quantum core to power the engines?" "That is insane," Jiwoo said. "We do not know what it will do. We know that it powers a 300-year-old station all by itself," Minnie said. "It must be incredibly powerful, and we know that the core is awakening. It is like it wants to be used." Teo began to connect the power systems. His hands moved carefully. Understanding the physics of how to connect an ancient power source to a modern engine, the quantum core was too hot to touch now, and it was pulsing with light so bright that they had to close their eyes. But when the connection was made, the ship began to move faster, much faster. The engines roared with power that they had never had before. The ship moved through the obsidian nebula like a comet, burning away the darkness. "We will make it," Teo said, and he finally allowed himself to close his eyes and fall asleep. The obsidian nebula fell away behind them. One moment, they were in complete darkness, and the next moment, there was light. Stars appeared around them. The void of space became clear and beautiful. They had made it through. The Council Station Horizon 7 appeared ahead of them, exactly where they had left it. It seemed impossible that the station was still there, that the galaxy still existed, that the cosmos had not stopped turning while they were in that place of darkness and death. As they approached the docking bay, alarms began to sound. All around the station, ships began to move toward them. Military ships. The Council was ready for them to fail, ready for them to return as corpses or not return at all. They were not ready for humans to succeed. But the alarm changed. Instead of weapons, the docking bay opened. They were allowed to land. When the airlock opened, there were 1,000 guards waiting for them. But they did not attack. They stood aside as Jiwoo, Mine, Teo, and Haiwan walked forward. Mine held the quantum core in her hands. It had stopped pulsing now. It seemed to be sleeping, as if it had used all of its power to help them get home. The doors to the Grand Assembly Chamber opened before them. It seemed like even more aliens had come to watch the second part of this story. The chamber was so full of beings that there seemed to be no air left to breathe. Jiwoo walked to the center of the chamber. He looked up at Vexthor, at the Supreme Counselor, who had given them an impossible task. For a moment, their eyes met again, just as they had before. But this time, something was different in those cold black eyes. Something like surprise. Something like respect. Mine placed the quantum core on the floor in the center of the chamber. It began to glow. The light spread across the chamber, illuminating the faces of thousands of aliens who had come to watch an extinction, but instead, they were watching a resurrection. "The Obsidian Nebula," Jiwoo said, his voice strong and clear, "is a place where your greatest technology fails. It is a place where the strength of your civilization becomes weakness. But humans are not the strongest when we have the most technology. We are the strongest when we have to be clever, when we have to work together, when we refuse to accept that something is impossible." He paused, looking around at the council. "You gave us a test to prove whether humans should exist," Jiwoo said. "We have passed that test, not because we are stronger than you, not because we are smarter than you, but because we learned something from you that you have forgotten. We learned that survival is not about having the best tools. Survival is about never ever giving up." The chamber was silent. Then something unexpected happened. The younger alien species began to make sounds. Some were cheering. Some were making their own versions of applause. The Terran Alliance, the group of younger species that had supported humans, stood and showed their respect. But the older species, the ones who had voted for extinction, remained silent. They were silent because they were forced to accept a truth they had not wanted to see. The human species was worthy. The human species would not be destroyed.